What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast.
It's like a weird.
I'm your co-host, Bryan Hornung, here with Reginald Andre from Arc Solvers, Ryan O'Hara from Sphinx Cybersecurity, and Randy Bryan from Tech Rescue. How are you, gentlemen?
Good.
Doing well.
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I just got back from Florida, and I just got a text message from somebody that had some interesting news, and that's why I was a little distracted there at the start of the show. So how's it going, guys? We're back. You guys were in Florida, and I was in Florida for a different reason. You guys were in Florida together.
I'm heading back there today.
We're going back there because you loved it so much.
You do know, Ryan, there's something called Nicole heading your way in Orlando?
Yes, I did see that. So
Okay.
I think some of the outdoor events are probably not going to go as planned. We'll see.
All right.
So, yeah, speaking of which, we could touch on that a little bit, Andre, but since you're talking to Ryan and talking now, so keep talking and tell us what our fee for the show is.
There is no fee. It is free 99. All we do is we ask that you listen, you share it with people that you think will find interest in this, your HR managers, your owners, board directors. Everything here that we're saying is just to give back to the community. So it's free 99.
Nice. Yep. So just share us out, help us grow, comment, like, share, subscribe, whatever you got to do. We're everywhere. And that's all you got to do. And we appreciate it. And we'll keep bringing this to you. So we did miss last week. So we kind of got to fill in this week. We weren't able to do a show last week because schedules got just completely jammed up.
We've all been traveling like the last 3 weeks. We've
all
been
of us are traveling
in the air.
And we actually have jobs to do too. So,
Right.
So it just, the time slips away quickly, but we got a good show for you today. Educating you on what the heck hackers are doing today. First one we got, and we've talked about this before, but I think, the discussion revolves around business people understanding that their networks are probably already compromised. And again, it goes back to me saying all the time on this show, ransomware just doesn't happen. Like, they don't get in, somebody doesn't click on the phishing email, and then 5 minutes later you have ransomware. They're sitting on your network for a very long time. It's surprising that a lot of companies don't detect this before a bigger problem happens. But we got to, we were reading an article from Bleeping Computer where it's basically saying hackers are selling access to 576 corporate networks for $4 million. So I guess that's a price tag saying they have access to 576 corporate networks verified. And if you want to have access as well, you can buy the whole bundle for $4 million. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. That's a steal.
Well, I don't know that it's a bundle. So it's saying that in the 110 threat actors posting 576 initial access offerings, totaling a cumulative value of $4 million. So I imagine there's some bundling in there, but I mean that's what we're dealing with right now.
So if you buy them separately, the total's $4 million. But if you want to negotiate a bundle, you probably get like 1.5.
But it also says 110 different threat actors. So I mean, this is the market, right? It's not one cyber criminal group that is doing all of this from start to finish. They're compartmentalizing themselves and specializing themselves now, where one finally gets access to a particular network and then sells that access to somebody who's going to deliver the ransomware, and then so on and so forth. So it's a huge business setup across the board.
We've been following this pretty much all year as this has developed. Basically, it's its own industry now.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, at the end of the article, it says that it's become basically getting access to your networks and then selling them has become an integral part of the ransomware supply chain. So these people are doing this, and then they're selling access to your network. We've seen that a lot, and we've seen this evolve over this year as they become more specialized, as they offer things like ransomware as a service. And now what is this? We're going to call this like access to your network as a service or something, but we're seeing that happen this year.
But there's another layer of it too. So another thing that we're seeing is how often our companies are getting hit more than once. So they're selling the access right here. So another company buys that access. That company threat actor buys that access, deploys the ransomware. If somebody comes in and just wipes and reloads machines and doesn't actually do proper remediation, then they've still got access to it. So they collected potentially collected ransomware. And then they sell that access to the next guy who then does it all over again because it wasn't cleaned up.
Yikes.
So you got 576 offerings, initial access offerings in the third quarter of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
The prior two quarters were quarter two, 553, and then quarter one, 522, respectively. So it's not only is it going up, there's only 90 days in a quarter, right? So, that's just a ridiculous amount of companies that are being breached, at basically 6-7 companies a day are being breached every quarter, and they don't even know it,
right?
Because they don't have ransomware yet. The actors who are actually going to do the damage haven't, even gotten their hands on the situation yet. So, it's amazing to me that this is the number we're dealing with.
And I'd be curious to know too. And I don't know if anybody really knows the answer to this. I mean, how many? So that would be, if 100% of them were successful and not caught, that's what you got, that number right there, 576. Presumably, many of them are getting in there, getting access, and getting caught before they can do anything bad. So, how often is this happening? What do the numbers and percentages look like for this kind of stuff?
Andre, were you going to say something?
Oh no, I was just going to say it's a great business model. You pay a few $1,000s to get this list here, and then the average ransom payment in 2022 is about $250,000, I believe, was the last statistics. I mean, $8 grand. It's a great numbers there. So
yeah, it's crazy. And then you're basically saying, the prices are going up. Not only are the prices going up, but they're getting more access. And then there was a single case that this security researcher saw where somebody was asking for $3 million. But I guess the important thing to point out is like the average price of the listing was $2,800. The asking price, the selling price did reach a record figure of $1,350. So I don't know, $1,350 to get access to a network. Obviously, I don't know what kind of networks these are. It doesn't go into the specifics, but there was an evaluation done where 13% was professional services, 10% was manufacturing and industrial products, another 10% technology, consumer retail 6%, financial services 5%, engineering construction 6%, almost 6% there too. So it's a large, and then they have 34% is other sectors, which doesn't seem to be covered. I don't know what other sectors would be. It's odd to me. It seems like they got a pretty good breakout here of sectors. I don't know what other sectors will be, but that's a big chunk, right? If you're not in professional services, transportation, government, education, engineering, construction, financial services, consumer retail, tech, or manufacturing, that's your business is the largest sector that it could be affected by this. And I guess consumer retail's there, so I don't know what that other 34% could be. You guys have any idea? Any thoughts on that? No. I think everything I'm seeing is covered. So I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's.
I would suspect a portion of it falls under professional services, just a different way of looking at it. Because all the numbers I've seen, professional is usually higher.
I guess it would. It's not beyond the possibility that these could be home networks. No?
I mean, it's probably not beyond the possibility, but they're not going to get a whole lot of money selling a home network as much as they would, selling a business. So They probably
I
have.
agree, but that's why the number might be around 1,000.
Yeah, that's maybe what the unknown is.
Right? If it's an actual verified business, I got to imagine that's well into 5 figures, right? But if you're selling access to like a home and it's a home because you've exploited it, you've been in there and it's um something that's in the home because you're seeing TVs and PS4s. But the home can be a place where a hacker can do damage because people work from home. But I'm just trying to figure out like the data that I'm looking at here, and I can't figure out what the biggest 1/3 of this whole study is in other sector, and we don't really know what that is.
Well, and we've seen too where you can hit a home and that was your starting point access to get into a corporate network. The Cisco thing where they got into his Gmail account and looked at the passwords he stored in Chrome. So yeah, hard to say. Sometimes these numbers are looked at through a certain perspective and they don't give you the context.
Yep. So we got hundreds of new U.S. news sites push malware and supply chain attack. And this is another interesting one that we kind of came across where it's a media company and it looks like hackers have compromised the infrastructure to deploy what's known as a SOC ghoulish JavaScript malware framework, also known as fake updates, on the websites of hundreds of newspapers across the U.S. So, breaking it down, websites have advertising on them. If you go to a lot of media sites, CNN, you're going to see ads throughout the articles, at the bottom, on the right, at the top, depending on where they have the placement. And, CNN, their job in this world is to report on the news, not necessarily sell advertising. So, especially when it comes to websites, they outsource this to third-party companies that specialize in finding advertisers, and then they push these ads to various sites. That's why you see, something you may have been searching for, and then you go over to CNN, and whatever you were searching for is now an ad on your screen. That company is kind of figuring out what you're doing on your computer, and then they're trying to serve you with ads where they think you're going to click or you're going to take some action if they do so. So that's kind of what's happening here. This company that provides ads to various media outlets was essentially hacked, and they were able to put, malware through these ads on people's computers. Now, I don't know if you guys want to go any more technical than that, but, I guess people would sit there and go, well, how can I visit a website and get a virus? Does anybody want to tackle that and kind of break that down and help people understand at a level that any person who might be using a web browser might understand?
I mean, basically, when you open the site, there's a certain amount of trust that happens every time you go to a website, which means your vulnerability goes up as the trust goes down, and there's a certain handshake that takes place. And so you go to an infected site and certain things can happen. And typically they take advantage of either lack of antivirus on your computer, lack of security on the browser, or something that's not patched. And so it could just be some little simple thing that just finds maybe an unpatched on your browser. Maybe your browser's not up to date, and then boom, they have, basically admin access to your computer. So it can happen with websites, just as easy as anything, really.
And I think the human factor of this too. So two things. One, you go to a reputable news site, you're not expecting this kind of thing. So you've got this sense of security, which in this case turns out to be a false one, where you're on, use the example of CNN. You're on CNN, and you're trusting the content here to be safe, to be monitored. It's kind of the lesson that we keep teaching all the time. You can't really trust anything, even if it is one of the major players. And then two, time frame wise, right now, I mean, I don't know enough about the traffic trends with news sites, but I would suspect with it being election cycle right now, the traffic on those news sites is probably much higher than it is on any normal time.
Yeah, 100%. So, one of the things that I'm seeing being pointed out is the fact that this particular attack revolves around users being prompted with a update, like a Chrome update, Firefox update, depending on what browser they're using. And that's a very easy thing for a person, anybody, to figure out.
Especially with Chrome lately. I mean, how many 0 days have they had that they've needed you to prompt you to patch? So
That, but
it looks totally normal.
that too, but they, you can visit a website and you come to my website, we're going to know what browser you're using.
Yep.
That's very simple, right? And then they can just easily say, show this person this file which has Chrome / Opera, Firefox, whatever update. So you believe that it's actually an update for that browser that you're using, and then boom, you click it, you run it because you think you're installing the software, and now you have this vulnerability, this malware on your system. It's really that simple. The interesting thing to me is, guys, and you can comment on this if you'd like, they're really not naming the organizations affected by this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but they're basically saying including national news outlets from New York, Boston, Chicago, Miami, Washington, D.C., and more. So it would almost lead me to believe that it's some kind of an affiliate that has multiple offices and multiple stations around the country, like an ABC, an NBC, a CBS, as opposed to like an MSNBC or CNN. That typically doesn't have local affiliates.
Could be NDA type stuff too, where the media company's just not allowed to list who they work with.
Right.
Cases, and it could just be that there's so many of them. Putting a list out doesn't really help you at all.
Now, do you guys agree with that? You think that they should be letting you know, like, hey, if you visited, like, Chicago, Fox Chicago, you should be checking your computer for malware?
For one, people need to be aware that they may have been impacted by this, so that they can at least start being somewhat reactive, as opposed to we talk about it all the time. These things get in there and they may not do anything for months. But two, I think it goes back to the repeat topic that we have about destigmatizing this type of thing and letting people know that this stuff is happening every day and going on.
Probably there's somebody in this that's required to report it. So, I mean, they need to come out and say what sites they are, and the sites need to update themselves and fix the issues, and not keep spreading this malware around for sure.
Yeah, in the conference I'm in, they were even talking about that. We need to be more of a community. If you know that there's a ditch going that way, and you put a cone, you put a sign that says, "Hey, don't go that way." It has to be the same thing. If it wasn't no one's fault per se, but you need to tell the community. You need to put a banner on your website and let people know. Communicate with people, or else we're just going to continue this cycle.
100%. So we got a couple wins, I guess you could say, for the good guys. I know that there was a major Ukrainian cyber criminal taken down a couple weeks ago, who was being extradited from the Ukraine back to the U.S. But we also have this one where we have Hushpuppi, and he got 11 years in prison for cyber fraud.
They finally caught the Nigerian prince.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead, Randy. Tell us.
Oh no, I'm laughing at Ryan's joke because he's literally from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lot of followers using business email compromise and other methods to basically launder and or steal money. So he was involved in a lot of stuff. Once again, using a little bit of trust that he had, sounds like, to open doors for crime.
we're going to see the documentary next, where over the last 10 years how much he had to struggle to learn the language and be able to spell better so that he could pull these scams off.
So this guy targeted American and international victims, becoming one of the most prolific money launderers in the world. And in some cases, he provided his services to North Korean hackers who attempted to steal money from European banks. But what did he what did he do? He scammed people through Instagram? Is that basically what he did?
I'm not sure how he did it, but it's almost like, it's funny that Ryan mentioned the Nigerian prince thing, because it's almost the opposite of that. Because in the Nigerian prince scam, the prince has a lot of money that he needs to get rid of, and then he uses that to steal money from you. But in this scam, he literally did have a lot of money that he needed to get rid of, and I'm not quite sure how he did it at that point. But when you're laundering money, you have money that you are trying to change hands, and you do it in such a way that it's not traceable. So then someone can end up with cash that they can actually spend. So
they're saying this guy laundered like over 300 million.
Yeah. Well, they probably don't want to give you the playbook on how he did it either. So
no, probably not.
Duplicate it.
That's true.
It's a lot of money to be laundering. Number one, he only had to pay like 1.7 million to two different people. And he's going to jail for 11 years. So crime doesn't pay. And I guess, the biggest thing I always tell people with cyber crime is the biggest thing is, there is a massive trail that you leave behind. So even though you may be getting away with something for a very long time, chances are you're not going to get away with it forever, because it's just one of those things that's going to come back, and they're going to digitally trace it back to you and all that good stuff.
What was interesting about this trail, though, was his lifestyle was really how the investigators were trying to say, how's this guy living like this? And then they started peeling the layers and saying, oh, he's doing cybercrime.
It's unbelievable.
So he basically ratted himself out because of his lavish lifestyle.
Which is what dumb cyber criminals do, right?
There you go. Yeah.
So moving right along, our friends over at Emotet are back better than ever. The infamous bot malware operation that Microsoft once said they took down, they have not taken down, because they've come back, I guess, probably 6-8 months ago. And this Emotet, if you don't know who they are, it's essentially a malware distribution system that's highly automated, highly effective, that just distributes a massive amount of malware through phishing campaigns and malicious file spreading. And then once this, their payload is loaded on your system, the malware searches for all kinds of things. It'll search and steal for emails to use in future spam campaigns, and drop additional payloads such as command and control things like Cobalt Strike, or other malware that could eventually lead to ransomware. So this Emotet was a big deal. It was a big deal. Microsoft, couldn't pat themselves on the back anymore when they took this group down, along with our federal government. And here they are. They're back. They're stronger than ever. And this is only going to lead to more attacks in the near future. We talk about on this show all the time, indicators of things that we see out there that we know in 2 or 3 months that's going to be causing major headaches and problems around the world for companies. And this is one of those things. And we look at these things and we go, oh, this is back. This is, basically blasted out more malware. And these things will run for a little while before they get shut down again. But in the meantime, they're getting control and access to networks so they can do deeper and more horrific things to companies and individuals. So, that's kind of what's going on. Anything you want to add to that, guys?
What's interesting on this one is how they're getting people, which is through the Excel spreadsheets. So how many people have raise your hand you open an Excel spreadsheet and you see one of those enables or one of those prompts that's marking you to like go ahead and click on it so that it can open the Excel spreadsheet fully and you can use all the different things that's there. So we already know that users have the bad habit of just clicking yes and not even reading what they're doing. So it's a very
and even then it's too easy to trick them to do it. I mean, that was a scam too that we saw for a long time, where the attacker would send a resume doc to an HR person, and then they would in the instructions, hey, when this comes through, make sure you hit enable in order to see something on this resume. So they were basically giving them the instructions on how to deploy it, and they were falling for it easy.
So one of the things it's also saying that this Emotet is doing, which is really super interesting and will probably blow most people's minds, is it says it reads the email chain. So it can insert itself, like you're corresponding, like Ryan and I are corresponding back and forth, and we have an Excel file that we're working on, right? This Emotet bot can basically create a new email, make it look like the email attachment that you're working with somebody, and then attach that same name, same extension. You think it's that file from that person. You click on it and open it up, and now you have the malware. Because, yeah, you're going to have to enable content and stuff like that, but you're not going to think twice about doing that because you're going to think that, oh, well, they must have did something to, add this to the file. The trust level is very high, right? Because they're interjecting themselves into a legitimate transaction between two people. So if they can do that and they can make it look authentic, you're more than likely probably going to click on that Excel file and let it run whatever it wants. It's pretty slick.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, this literally, I'm thinking back to advice I used to give people in literally 2005. And that was, don't open an attachment unless you know who it's from. And you're expecting it. So I would say for people to be on the safe side, if you literally aren't expecting that, you need to call that person and say, hey, did you send this to me? And I wouldn't necessarily just.
But what do you do in the case where
you are expecting,
where you are like we've exchanged this email 3 or 4 times? It's a file we're working on together.
Yeah, no, that's a disturbing thing. That's what I was going to say, because if you know that through an email, the people could have already injected themselves into that email conversation.
And I think that's the lesson, though, to learn. So that's a perfect example where 2005, we could say, hey, just look out if you weren't expecting it. Treat it with caution. Now they're starting to paint that full picture where they're learning these things and inserting themselves right into where you don't even think twice about it. Like, hey, I was working on this. I was expecting him to send it right back to me. Boom, here it is, and you click on it, not thinking anything about it. So we're now in a situation where you can't trust anything.
Yeah, and this also really underlines the importance of having software on your computer that prevents elevation. So like automatically giving admin access in case they click on one of these. Process control, where if it's an unknown process, it's not allowed to run until it gets approval. That would stop this in its tracks if you didn't allow unknown processes to run. So there's a good argument here for a layered cybersecurity approach.
Absolutely.
So, question here from Steven. Is it possible to get malware by simply visiting a website, or these attacks, and this came in when we were talking about the Emotet, these attacks always require some action or prompt on the end user, on the end user's end? I would say in most cases, you're clicking something. And you're allowing it to run, or you're doing something to trigger or initiate it. But, to me, that doesn't matter. I talk to people and I observe things and I see things happen, like ransomware, to people who you're like, why did you click that? Why did you run that? Like, people just click things and click on run. It's like, I always used to say back in the day, are you when you got the prompt, are you an okay person or are you a cancel person, right? Are you the guy that always clicks okay, or are you the guy that clicks cancel? I was always the guy that clicks cancel. Something popped up and I didn't know what it was. I'm canceling or I'm hitting X out. But I would say half the population is probably an okay person, where they're clicking okay or run or do this.
I don't know what this is, so it sounds like I should just push it, right?
Yeah. Right.
The other thing, though, Brian, is there's also vulnerabilities that need to be considered here. So, to answer that question depends on the vulnerabilities that may exist on your system. So there could be a vulnerability that allows, something on that website that pops up that triggers the vulnerability that gives them access. Not a website, but maybe a good example of this would be the Apple vulnerability, where people could send you an iMessage, and just the text in that iMessage, even if you didn't look at it, just by sending it to you, triggered a vulnerability that allowed them access to your device.
Yeah, because it opened up in a sandbox. And I would say, even if the answer is no to this question that Stephen had, I would say always treat it like it's a yes, because the things that some of the hackers can do is pretty insane. And so I would assume, like I would have on my browser, I would have an extension to, stop you from going to sites that are known bad, stop you, you need to have some kind of DNS control that you're not going to sites that are less than a couple of weeks old, because that's where a lot of these happen. And then you've got to have that layered approach on your computer. You got to have that process control, that things that are unknown don't just run on your computer. And, you don't just get admin access every time, you just ask. Have those kind of things in place, because I've seen some pretty crazy stuff. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about an email that, I got into a safe place and started pulling it apart. And at one point it started trying to open stuff up on that machine. It literally pushed downloads to that machine. So yeah, I would say, yeah, you can get infected by simply visiting, and I would be very careful about where you go.
Yeah, and this is why it's so important to make sure that your computer stays up to date, because there are what they call the 0-day vulnerabilities, or even with the iPhone, because it was a particular version and they needed to have the latest updates, so that as soon as it's exploited and someone knows about it, it's updated. So make sure for your Chrome or your Edge that it's always up to date.
Crazy. I agree 100%. And then you have, if you're ever prompted for that stuff, like enable content inside of Excel, don't enable it. Don't allow it. Depending on your settings, you may or may not get that. You want to make sure those settings are turned to the highest level of protection, so you at least do get warned if something's trying to run within those files. And then, in the case where you're working with somebody and you happen to get a file where it unexpectedly, kind of going back to what Randy said, if you weren't expecting the file to behave that way, then you might want to think twice about allowing it to run or clicking on it, and ask the person, hey, did you enable some kind of macro or something on this file that you sent me? And then that should trigger a conversation similar to, I didn't send you a file yet, or I didn't send you that, and then they'll kind of figure out that something is kind of in between the messages. So we got a little bit of time here, guys, before we got to go. And I wanted to kind of bring up this one topic.
Surprise topic.
So I don't know if I even shared it with you guys. I just kind of saw it. Yeah, the last one in the private chat there. Azov ransomware. And I touched on this a few times earlier this year with our show, where they're going to start basically wiping your data versus encrypting it. And I'm not really sure what's behind this, and I wanted to get your thoughts kind of on the show as to what this could potentially be, or is this kind of like them testing it out type of thing? But if you read through the article, they essentially wipe your data, which means they make it corrupted. As I've kind of alluded to before, ransomware is going to evolve to a place where it's not going to be a lock my file, unlock my file type of thing. It's going to be your file is now deleted, and they either extracted it beforehand and they have it, or you're just kind of screwed. And in this case, with this malware, you're just kind of screwed. And it's, according to Virus Total, it's becoming pretty popular in the last couple of weeks. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on what the heck do you think is going on here? Like, why would cyber criminals just wipe people's files or corrupt them, not offer any kind of way, any kind of option to recover it? And they're really not asking for a ransom. If you contact them on their social media, they're basically telling you, go find a cybersecurity researcher or go find a cybersecurity expert and tell them what we did.
I mean, just going off the name, okay? Going off the name, Azov was a battalion. I guess it still is in the Ukraine army. They had ties with Nazis going back all the way to World War II. They've kind of broken off some of that and then got absorbed into the National Guard. And I may not be getting that exactly right, but it's a hot topic. Ukraine's a hot topic. Russia's a hot topic. Makes me feel like they're just doing it just to mess with people. And I wonder, you remember we discussed, like, I think around February, a ransomware that looked to see where you were from. And if you were from any country that's on the side of Russia, I think they basically left you alone. I wonder if it's something like that. I mean, honestly, it sounds like teenagers,
right?
You know, just being malicious because of the stuff that it does, and it encrypts like 666, I think, bytes at a time. 666, and it just starts randomly doing stuff on your computer, basically rendering it inoperable. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah. What's the end game? I
mean, one of the things they do is they
read about themselves in the news. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
One of the things they do is they're clearly saying that they wipe the data, or they I'm trying to find the right word here. They corrupt it. So you can't use it. They're also corrupting executable files within Windows, which basically it wrecks your Windows, like nothing runs on it. But they're also kind of floating the theory that they're also using this to kind of deploy other malware on the computer or network. I don't know what this is. It's new, and it seems a hell of a lot like me. Like they're just, kind of fishing or testing things out.
If they were exfiltrating the data and then still doing the ransom and then having to give it back to you, I get that, because how many times have we seen the decryption key for a particular threat actor get leaked, and so somebody just Googles and finds it and they're able to get out without paying the ransom. So this would circumvent that, but it doesn't sound like that's what they're doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be targeted too. Maybe there's if you're supporting the war or publicly supporting the war, something like that politically, where they're just going to say, okay, we're just going to wipe your data. We just want to ruin your business as much as we can, type of thing.
Or it's a wag the dog type of thing, where they're just, hey, look at these files that you can't use anymore. But they're really just planning like password stealers and keyloggers and things like that. So you're not looking for those things. You're only focused on the obvious thing that's hitting you in the face, which is these corrupted files. But
like a magician gets you to look over here while he's doing something over here.
100%.
It could be testing something larger too down the road.
I think it's both. I think it's that, and I think this is the precursor to whatever's next for ransomware. Is personally what I think is happening here. Can we do it type of thing?
The name could also just be a red herring.
It totally is. It totally is.
To do with all
because if you read the ransomware note or whatever you want to call it, the note that they put in, it's about is trashing the West, and you didn't help Ukraine. Kind of like making you feel bad, like it's your fault that Crimea was seized, type of talk. Which I got to think that most people who open this note, who have their files encrypted or corrupted at this point, are going to look at this and go, "What?
Yeah,
what?
It's like an awful lot of work for that type of point."
Yeah. So, I mean, I can share the screen real quick and just before we go and just kind of show everyone the ransomware note. Because I have it up. But it's a little wild. I mean, simple text file, Azov ransomware. He's a Polish security expert. You got to reach out to him on Twitter. And then to recover your files, contact us in Twitter. Contact them there, but they also want you to contact, Malware Hunter Team, Lawrence Abrams, Bleeping Computer, and then they go off on this whole geopolitical rant. And Biden doesn't want to help Ukraine. You people of the United States, come to the streets, make revolution, keep America great. Like, what? Why would that get me to do anything with any of this? So, just interesting where all this stuff is going and where it's
A
coming.
lot of random stuff in there.
Yep.
Totally. So, interesting stuff, but it's going to affect your business one day. I mean, that's, this is the stuff that's happening out there. This is why we talk about this stuff because, as crazy as what we just showed you sounds, you could potentially be dealing with this in your business one day.
And we'll probably have something crazier for you even next week.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? So, all right, guys, thanks for your time today. Safe travels to anyone who's traveling. And
Fun as always. Maybe next week we'll all be in our own places instead of somebody being off someplace new.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
all right, guys.
All right. Take care.
See you next week.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.